Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep into an institution that's so much more than just a place for high-level musical training.
Right.
We're looking at the Peabody Institute of the Johns Hopkins University, a cultural hub. It's really a cornerstone of American arts philanthropy right there in Baltimore.
And it's crucial to set the stage, because while Peabody is known internationally, its origins really define its purpose today.
Oh,
It's a private music and dance conservatory and a preparatory school in Maryland, but it was established way back in 1857.
Victorian era.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while we all connect it with Johns Hopkins now, JHU, that affiliation is so much more recent. It only started in 1977.
So our mission for this deep dive is to follow that journey, to
Yeah.
understand the sheer audacity of its founding vision
Mhm.
and how it grew from a local academy into this international cultural center, and maybe why the surprising range of people who've studied or taught there makes it so uniquely American.
It's a whole cultural history wrapped up in one magnificent building. And if you want to understand any great institution, you have to start with the money.
A money and the vision.
Exactly. The Peabody story begins not with a composer, but with a merchant and financier who was, well, arguably the wealthiest American of his time, George Peabody.
Born in 1795. The scale of his financial life is what really gets me.
It was massive.
Peabody didn't just make his money in one place. He started in Massachusetts, but then a huge part of his fortune was cemented during his 2 decades in Baltimore.
Right, from 1815 to 1835.
But then he goes transnational. He just exponentially increases his wealth through banking and finance, living in New York, and most importantly, London.
His career is like the definition of Gilded Age opportunity, even though he kind of predates it.
So when the Institute finally opens its doors in 1866, the financial side is it's staggering.
It is. He backed it with a bequest of about $800,000 from his personal fortune. And to put that in perspective, in 1866, that amount was truly monumental.
An investment in the public good that almost nobody was making at the time.
Not at that scale, no.
And the opening itself, it was filled with historical drama. That original building, the beautiful white marble Grecian Italianate wing,
The one designed by Edmund George Lynn.
that one. It was supposed to open much earlier, but its construction was actually delayed by the American Civil War.
Which makes the 1866 dedication ceremony just such a powerful symbol. It's like a civic renewal for Baltimore and for the whole country, really.
And Peabody himself was there.
He was. He traveled all the way from London. He spoke on the steps right in front of the Washington Monument Circle, addressing this huge crowd.
And the detail that stands out to me from the sources is who was in that crowd.
Oh, yes. The mention that hundreds of pupils from the Baltimore City Public Schools were there.
That completely reframes the institution's initial intent. It shows it was never meant to be just some elite, closed-off conservatory.
No, the early role was much, much broader. It was a true public trust.
So what did that look like on the ground?
Well, you had the conservatory, for sure, but also a public lecture series, an art gallery, and the library. But their commitment to the city's youth really came through in the Peabody Prizes.
The prizes. I love this detail. The annual gold, silver, and bronze medals with certificates in cash for the top graduates of the city schools.
And it wasn't a short-lived thing either. That tradition of the Peabody Prizes continued for an astonishing 122 years.
Wow.
It just deeply embedded the Institute into the educational fabric of Baltimore. It showed that Peabody's vision was about excellence across the board, not just music.
So if we zoom out, what does this level of giving really mean for the bigger picture of American wealth and philanthropy?
I mean, it establishes George Peabody as a foundational figure. He created the model for the Gilded Age.
We usually think of Andrew Carnegie.
Right, but the sources are explicit. Both George Peabody and his friend Enoch Pratt, who endowed the first public library system in America in 1882, they directly inspired Carnegie.
So Peabody set the standard, how to turn a huge personal fortune into these enduring public institutions for culture and knowledge.
He absolutely did.
And that legacy is physically immortalized in the building itself, especially the George Peabody Library. When people think of the Institute, they picture that room.
That library is the defining architectural landmark, no question. It was completed in the expansion that finished the eastern half of the building between 1877 and 1878.
So paint a picture for us. What makes that space so much more impactful than other Gilded Age libraries?
It's often called a cathedral of books, and that really fits. It's the verticality and the light. You have 5 stacked tiers of these ornate black wrought iron balconies holding the books.
And it all rises up to that massive glass skylight.
Exactly. It's this perfect blend of sort of industrial strength and classical elegance. It is, without a doubt, one of the most beautiful libraries in the U.S.
And its function was also unique for the time.
Yes. It's a historical collection full of 19th century and rare books, and it's non-circulating. It was built to be a reference library for the public, for scholars.
Which, as you noted, came years before Enoch Pratt's formal public library system.
Reinforcing that Peabody was just way ahead of his time on this idea of shared knowledge.
And this whole cultural anchor sits right in the middle of history, too. The campus is in the Mount Vernon neighborhood, which is a National Historic Landmark District.
And the main building itself has been a Baltimore City landmark since 1975. It is literally woven into the city's heritage.
So let's shift to the academic structure today. This history supports a kind of dual mission.
It does. On one side, you have the conservatory, which is a highly specialized institution.
And we mean high level. They offer the Doctorate of Musical Arts degree, the DMA.
Exactly. The DMA is the highest professional degree for performers and composers. It puts them in a really elite tier. Only about 156 schools in the U.S. even offer it.
And then on the other side, keeping that original civic promise alive, you have the preparatory school.
The prep school. It offers instruction and enrichment for school-age children, even adults. They have sites not just on the main campus, but in surrounding areas like Towson and Annapolis.
So that mission echoes the spirit of the Peabody Prizes, keeping the institution accessible.
Absolutely. It ensures the institute's impact goes way beyond the small group of professional conservatory students.
So you're serving the absolute highest echelon of musical art while also doing community engagement and building a pipeline for young people.
And to support both, you need serious academic infrastructure. So besides the historic George Peabody Library, there's also the Arthur Friedheim Library.
That's the modern working library.
Right. It's the music reference library with over 100,000 books, scores, and recordings for the current students and faculty.
Okay, let's pivot to innovation. Because for an institution that looks like this 19th century monument, Peabody was actually surprisingly radical.
This is where the story gets really unexpected. You might associate conservatories with, I don't know, harpsichords and sheet music, but the Peabody Institute established its electronic music department in 1967.
1967, that's practically the Stone Age for digital tech. That is incredibly early for any school, let alone a classical conservatory.
It was more than early. It was pioneering. The sources confirmed this was the first electronic music department in any American conservatory.
That's the aha moment.
It is. While big universities were maybe experimenting, for a conservatory to integrate this technology into its core curriculum, that was a huge leap for modern composition.
It says so much about their leadership at the time, and there's still tangible proof of that legacy, right?
Oh, yeah. The department still houses 2 historic Moog modular synthesizers from its first decade.
That is such a great nugget of knowledge.
It's like finding Gutenberg's printing press, but for electronic music history. It proves Peabody has always been willing to push the boundaries of what music is, even while upholding classical traditions.
And that tension between tradition and modernity must have been critical as the institution evolved, especially when it moved toward merging with Johns Hopkins.
Absolutely. The decision to affiliate with JHU in '78 and then become a full constituent school in 1985 was a massive institutional shift.
But was that a smooth transition? I mean, you often hear that when a specialized art school merges with a giant research university, there's friction over funding or artistic freedom.
That's a great question. And while, it meant adapting to a much larger structure, the affiliation provided critical financial stability. It gave them access to JHU's wider academic resources.
And it probably allowed them to expand their offerings.
It did, especially in areas like composition and music technology, which solidified their future. It gave them a safety net that smaller, independent conservatories just don't have.
That makes a lot of sense. And just to round out the institutional history, we should probably mention one department that didn't make it.
Right, the Sacred Music Department. It was inaugurated in 1955, but is now defunct.
It just shows that these academic structures are always changing, responding to the times.
Exactly. But the core commitment to arts education has been the thread holding it all together since the beginning.
But the buildings and the degrees are only half the story. To understand Peabody's real influence, you have to look at the people it shaped.
The list of alumni and faculty is just incredibly varied. It reflects that dual identity of high culture and radical innovation we've been talking about.
Let's start with the people who define high culture. You have legends like the operatic soprano Jessie Norman
An iconic, powerful voice.
and the minimalist composer Philip Glass, whose work is, almost the opposite of the traditional repertoire taught there. That juxtaposition is fascinating.
It is. It shows that Peabody teaches fundamental technique, but the application of that technique is wide open. Glass took those fundamentals and created completely new sound.
And then there's the ultimate example of precocious talent, Tori Amos.
Tori Amos is such a great case study. She was the youngest student ever admitted to the Institute. She enrolled at 5 years old.
5, with perfect pitch.
Her story connects right back to that tradition of finding and nurturing immense, sometimes unconventional talent from a very early age.
And the influence stretches so far beyond just music performance. You have Lance Reddick, the actor and musician,
Prolific actor.
and Lillian Smith, the author of the hugely influential novel Strange Fruit. It shows the discipline taught at Peabody translates into all sorts of creative careers.
And a true pioneer. Sylvie Meyer, the harpist. She graduated from Peabody and then became the first female member of the National Symphony Orchestra.
A huge milestone in breaking down barriers in orchestral music.
Directly tied to her training at Peabody.
And the faculty list tells the same story. You have these historical giants like the composer Elliott Carter, who taught there from 1946 to 48.
Alongside legendary pianists like Leon Fleischer and organists like Virgil Fox, who are upholding that high classical tradition.
But then you look at the modern faculty, and this is where that 1967 electronic music legacy really comes to life.
You get these contemporary figures that show the school is still completely relevant.
You mean people like Lupe Fiasco, the hip-hop artist who's been a visiting professor?
Yes, and Thomas Dolby.
The "She blinded me with science," Thomas Dolby.
The very same. He's involved in teaching music for new media. It's a powerful statement.
It says Peabody understands that modern composition means knowing digital media, video game scoring, modern sound engineering.
And by hiring people from hip-hop and electronic music, they connect that old Moog synthesizer directly to today's marketplace. They're teaching students how to build a career in the 21st century.
And of course, the great operatic tradition continues with someone like Denise Graves on the voice faculty, so that legacy remains unbroken.
Right. And one last cultural touch point.
Yes.
The Institute even shows up in literature.
Yeah.
In the 1980 novel, Jacob Have I Loved, the main character goes to a summer program there for singing.
So it was just part of the cultural imagination as a place for serious students.
Exactly.
So if we synthesize this whole deep dive, there seem to be 3 major elements that really define the Peabody Institute's power.
I'd agree. First, its origin is this monumental, civic-minded gift from George Peabody, which set the precedent for American public giving that influenced titans like Carnegie.
Second, its stunning architectural heart, the George Peabody Library. It's a non-circulating monument to 19th century scholarship that symbolizes that commitment to combining arts and humanities.
And third, its academic duality. The high-level conservatory working alongside the broad preparatory school, all of it supported by this pioneering spirit that made it the first conservatory to embrace electronic music.
It's an incredible story of civic commitment, built on the idea of broad public access to culture and knowledge. All started by one of the wealthiest men in America choosing to invest in art and education, not just industry.
And that raises a really important question for you, the listener, to think about.
Yeah.
We noted that the George Peabody Library predated the first public library system in America and inspired Andrew Carnegie. So when you look at the cultural centers you rely on today, your city museums, your local concert halls, your public libraries, we're asking you to consider this. How many of them truly exist? Because George Peabody first set the precedent that transnational wealth should be invested back into accessible public art and education, creating these physical, lasting landmarks. It just shows the sheer lasting power of audacious philanthropic foresight.